From Connecticut Public Radio in Hartford, this is Seasoned. I'm Robin Doyon-Aiken. There's a lot of good local stuff to share with you this hour. First up, Priya Krishna, food writer and reporter at the New York Times. She shares some of the stories behind her new book, Priya's Kitchen Adventures. She also talks about some of her most meaningful work for the Times and previews Chefs, the Connecticut Forum's upcoming live panel at the Bushnell on May 21st. Priya's fellow panelists are Marcus Samuelson and Gail Simmons, and the event is moderated by Sam Sifton. Later in the show, the couple behind Samad Gardens Initiative describes teaching newbie gardeners how to grow food for themselves and their communities. Azeem Blessings Kareem and Sarah Rose Kareem will also share how you can connect with nature by growing vegetables, greens, and herbs in beds or recycled containers. Plus, you've heard of CSAs, but what does it mean to be a CSA grocery store? We talk with Jocelyn Cerda, founder of Mercado Popular. Jocelyn wants to connect the Hartford community with fresh, healthy, local food by working with BIPOC growers and makers. But first, Priya Krishna is a food writer and contributor to the New York Times, the New Yorker, and more. She's the author or co-author of several books, including Cooking at Home with David Chang and Indian-ish with her mother, Ritu. Her latest book is Priya's Kitchen Adventures. It's a cookbook for kids. Priya joins me to talk about her new cookbook, which includes recipes inspired by her travels around the world as a kid. Priya Krishna, welcome to Seasoned.
Thank you so much for having me.
First, I want to congratulate you on your new book, Priya's Kitchen Adventures. It's a cookbook for kids, which I've come to the conclusion after reading it that you are quite possibly, Priya, America's favorite aunt.
Oh,
you are. You're not talking down to kids at all in this cookbook. You're taking them on a culinary adventure through many of the world's great cuisines. Can you talk about how your childhood inspired the structure of this book?
Yeah, I was very lucky as a child in that my mother worked in the airline industry. And if anyone out there is an airline kid, they know that that comes with benefits, which means you can stand by for a flight. And if there's room, you can fly for free or at a steep discount. So large parts of my childhood were just spent running around airports with suitcases filled with all-weather clothing, seeing what flight we could get on. And it was absolutely chaotic. But the upside was that I got to go to places like Egypt and China and France all before high school. And so I just thought that would be a fun story to tell kids. It would make for a very fun cookbook. And in addition to the story, I thought, why aren't there more inclusive and diverse kids cookbooks that really teach them about different cultures that are right here in the United States? So yeah, that was the inspiration.
I love how you included kid recipe testers' comments sprinkled in throughout. Can you talk about how you recruited kids to make and taste the recipes from the book? And I wonder if you were surprised at all by their feedback, because like kids, they don't usually hold back when they have thoughts about food.
Oh, that's for sure. I can't confirm that that is correct. I originally had reached out to my nieces and nephews. I have about 8 or 9 of them, my cousins and my sister's kids, to recipe test. And a bunch of them were like, if you need more people, we can just reach out to the parents at our school. So I had them basically send notes out to the schools that their kids attended. And I was able to recruit 30 recipe testers, all aged between like 4 or 5 up until 12. And they were really the heart and soul of the book. And I was frankly blown away by how detailed and insightful their feedback was. I had adult recipe testers for Indian-ish, and I found that adults kind of beat around the bush. They try to, sandwich a complaint with a compliment, but really I just wanted straightforward feedback, and the kids gave me just that. If something was gross to them, they said yucky. If they loved something, they said it was better than tater tots. So you just got to really experience like the joys and the lows of their recipe testing experience in an unfiltered way. And that was amazing.
In addition to teaching kids how to read a recipe and some basic knife skills early on, there are chapters devoted to recipes from like the places you said you traveled to: Greece, Mexico, France, China, Italy, Morocco, Egypt, Peru, and more. But I want to know the backstory to the recipe from India, or one of the recipes from India. It's the dahi bala, I think. Am I saying it correct?
Dahi bala, yeah.
Yay, because I love recipes with a family connection, and I also love Indian street food too. So tell me about this one.
Dahi bala is a very classic street food. It's these fritters that are soaked in yogurt and different chutneys and lovely spicy crunchy bits. And my grandfather loved that dish, but it can be cumbersome to make at home. So he developed a home cook friendly version that my mom grew up with in India, in which you use sliced boiled potatoes instead of the fritters, and just covered it with all of the chutneys and the yogurt and chickpeas and cilantro, and it just becomes this like tangy, fresh, spicy, bright, sweet, sour, delicious mess. And I actually didn't know about this dish and about his variation until I started working on the book. And I knew that dahi bala was a really iconic Indian street food that I had encountered on travels to Delhi, but I didn't want any deep frying in the book because I personally don't deep fry. And my mom was like, well, why don't you use your Nana's version? She told me about this and I was like, oh, it's brilliant.
I don't like to deep fry at home either. And I even have like a big Le Creuset Dutch oven. And so if I have to, I will use it because it has the highest edges of any of my pans. But it's still, even a person who's been cooking for a long time, I'm still intimidated by frying at home.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. My husband is a little too unintimidated at the thought of frying at home, and our house regularly smells of fryer oil because he loves making donuts, but I am on your side, Robin.
So on Seasoned, we give lots of thought to where our food comes from, who's growing it, who's harvesting it, who's cooking it. So your on-the-job video series for the New York Times, like to us, it's some of your most impactful reporting, even though a lot of times you look like you're having a good time doing it and you look like you're having fun. But some of it is actually really, really deep and thought-provoking. And so for people who haven't caught it on YouTube, the series highlights the work of unsung heroes in New York City's restaurant and food world. You call them unseen, actually. So it's not big-time chefs, but like dishwasher Dre Alston, Celestino Garcia, an expert bagel roller, Sonia Perez, a tamale cart owner, and there are many more. Can you talk about some memorable moments from the series and what's stayed with you and the food makers you're still thinking about since that series rolled out?
Thank you so much for saying that. That series is some of the most rewarding work I've ever done in my career. And I really appreciate that it has had that impact on you, because every single one of those subjects sits with me far after. I will say the thing that they all have in common is that none of them think that their job is hard. They all think that the work that they do is easy, but it is not easy. It is incredibly difficult, tiring, taxing work. And I feel like I learn something from each of them. I am like humbled in a different way by each of them. They all have just such a wonderful energy. And sometimes that energy is very extroverted. Sometimes that energy is a little bit more quiet and reserved, but they all just have this really remarkable dignity to them. And I just think in media, we often like celebrate the people who are the really visible people, the front facing chefs, the actors starring in movies, but we don't look at the people whose labor we often take for granted, but who are very vital in our day-to-day lives. We are able to have our bagel every morning, go to a fine dining restaurant and have our dishes whisked away, go to a bodega and have our bacon, egg, and cheese. And I don't think that we think long or hard enough about the people who make that a reality. And so I'm I'm really proud of the series.
Yeah, you should be. There's so much heart in it. These people are the salt of the earth, and they are
Yeah.
the unseen, as you say. One of the things that people will come away with after watching some of the videos is just like how amazing their work is. It's very repetitive oftentimes, especially for the bagel roller. And you think, wow, he is born to do that. He's so skilled at it. It's kind of mesmerizing in a way. I love it so much, and I have such a deeper appreciation for the people who are unseen because of that series. It's just so wonderful.
Well, thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it.
So you've eaten amazing food all over the world, but in a few days' time, you'll find yourself in the state that's home to the pizza capital of America. That's Connecticut, of course. So, like, Priya, can I get you on record calling New Haven the pizza capital of America?
I have had New Haven pizza and loved it. My husband is headed to Yale in the fall to pursue an MFA in set design, and the first thing I thought was, pizza.
Yay. I'm glad to know you'll be visiting lots.
I definitely will.
So listeners, Priya will join acclaimed chef Marcus Samuelsson, food writer and Top Chef host Gail Simmons, and event moderator Sam Sifton of the New York Times, he's been on the show before, by the way, for a live, unscripted conversation at the Connecticut Forum on May 21st. The event is called Chefs, with an exclamation point. And you all are planning a lively conversation about food, flavor, and culture. Can you whet our listeners' appetites for some of the nuggets likely to come up in this discussion? Like, what do you hope to cover or predict food enthusiasts will ask about when you get together with Marcus, Gail, and Sam?
I just hope that we can, debate. I love talking to other food people about, our unflappable opinions, the opinions we have where we feel this is the correct opinion. And I know at the very least that me and Sam have so many opinions that we do not have in common. I think we have a lot of disagreements, but I think the disagreements are what make conversation fun. So I'm very excited to be talking with 3 very highly opinionated food people, and I want to know what their strong opinions are on sandwiches and tacos and burgers and, who actually makes the best pizza, and they will have no shortage of opinions.
The restaurant industry and kitchen culture has changed a lot in the last 4 years. Given all the reporting that you've done and the way you're almost embedded in the restaurant world as a reporter, what is standing out to you right now? In this moment, are you leaning toward, we've come a long way, baby, or more towards, we have a long way to go before kitchens are safe, equitable spaces for everyone who works in them?
I feel both ways. I think I encounter a lot more restaurants who provide their staff with 401ks and health insurance, but I don't know that the public fully understands or appreciates, the labor required of the restaurant industry and how long and how much this industry has just been built on the assumption of inexpensive labor. And I think we have a long way to go, but there is a lot that makes me very optimistic. I am lucky enough to get to travel the country to put together our list of best new restaurants every year, or I guess best restaurants. Not all of them are new. And more I encounter restaurants that sort of wear their values on their sleeve, literally putting on their menu what kind of benefits they provide to their staff, giving full credit to the front and back of house, stating plainly what they pay. And I think all of that is really good. But I think that is still just a small slice of restaurants, and I'd like to see more broad change.
I remember reading early on in the 2020s how fine dining was done, that was over. And then I'm starting to see articles come out now that's sort of like, oh, fine dining is back.
You know what's actually crazy? I feel like before the pandemic, all-day cafes were all the rage, and all-day cafes are gone. I feel like so many of them just disappeared. This thing that was it was like a white hot trend in 2017, 2018, 2019. I don't see many of them anymore. I miss them. I love them. I love a cafe that can do both, that can serve you coffee and a nice breakfast sandwich in the morning and, a nice glass of wine at night, but I don't see as many of them.
So we just covered some of the culture part. Now for flavor, instead of asking you about trendy spices or dishes that are all over TikTok, what I really want to know, since you're a home cook's home cook, what are you making for dinner tonight?
I am going out to dinner because I'm working on a story about hamburgers. So I am going out to eat hamburgers tonight.
What's the story? Is it a smash burger story? What's happening? I know that's a big thing right now, the oniony smash burgers.
It's a look at dining in America through the lens of the hamburger. I feel like in the 2000s, we had this era of chefy burgers, the one with the big steak knife through it, with the puffy brioche bun. And now I'm seeing a real reaction against that. Burgers that are more compact, a little bit messier, squishier, smashier. And the burger makers themselves have changed, and they're much more representative of what this country looks like. So we're going to profile like 25 or 30 burgers and each give them their own treatment. Maybe one burger will be an as told to from a chef. Another burger will be rendered in comic book form.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
When you're here with your husband at Yale, make sure you stop at Louie's Lunch.
Okay, yes. I know about the legend of Louie's Lunch. We wrote about it at my old food magazine, Lucky Peach.
Priya Krishna, thank you so much for talking with me. I hope you have a great time when you're here in Connecticut for the event next week.
Oh, it was wonderful. Thank you so much.
That was food writer and reporter Priya Krishna. If your little one is interested in cooking, get them Priya's Kitchen Adventures. You'll find 2 recipes from the book on our show page, ctpublic.org/seasoned, and on our recipe site, ctpublic.org/recipes. And here's a bonus for loyal listeners of Seasoned. You can go to ctpublic.org/chefs if you want to have a chance to win free tickets to the event. Or you can purchase tickets at ctforum.org. I'm Robin Doyon Aiken. It's time for a short break. When we get back, a seasoned first, a beatboxing farmer who teaches others how to grow their own food.
You give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, teach a man a fish, feed him for a lifetime. We need a lot of fishes to help really sustain ourselves.
This is Seasoned on Connecticut Public Radio. We'll be right back.
Yo, check it out. Check it. So my God, this initiative. CT Public Radio in the house.
Welcome back to Seasoned, everyone. I'm Robin Doyon Aiken, and you're listening to the beatbox stylings of Azeem Kareem. His friends call him Blessings. But Azeem isn't just a beatboxer, he's also a farmer. He and his wife, Sarah Rose Kareem, are teaching folks in the Bloomfield area about the importance of growing your own food. The couple spoke about their work with producer Tegan Engel.
Sarah Rose and Azeem, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having us. We're so excited to be here.
Peace.
You two have been farming together since 2017, and in 2020, you founded Samad Garden Initiative. Can you start by telling me, what does the name mean?
First and foremost, all praise due to God. Samad is one of the 99 names of God in Arabic.
Yeah, and part of the intention with that is it's the name that means the self-sufficient one, the one on whom everyone else depends. We were kind of thinking that the earth really embodies that quality. And it's the concept that we can be self-sufficient just with what comes from the earth. So the herbs, the produce, everything we wear, everything, it all comes from the earth. So we can really divest from harmful systems by investing in natural systems in the school of farming and herbalism and all of the occupations that come out of that. So that was the concept behind Samad as a farm and an education institution to train a new generation of farmers and herbalists and so on.
Yeah, and so can you give me a little more detail, Azeem? What are some of the things that you're doing on the farm to help manifest that name?
Quite a few things. First off, conventional farming has quite a colonizer mindset. You see what's natively there and you say, okay, well, I don't want none of y'all. I'm going to just go ahead and use my pesticides, my herbicides, all my poisons, my glyphosates. I'm going to kill all y'all off and just going to plant specifically what I want versus honoring the diversity that's already graciously, abundantly present inside of a native environment. So what we do is we look at what's already there, what's already growing, what's happening. There's a story that's happening there already. There's needs of the soil that are already being addressed, right? And anything I do to that soil, I understand that I'm causing some form of disruption already. So how do I introduce myself to this already booming, thriving ecology as a friend, as a caretaker, versus as a gentrifier and a colonizer? We strive to add on to the soil biology. We strive to add on to the life living inside the soil versus just killing everything.
And part of it is seeing the value. So, if we go out to a spot that has these wild herbs and wild crops growing, we see the stinging nettle. We can use that. That's highly medicinal, right? And highly valuable for us to consume without us having to, like he said, till or impose our own ideas on the land. First, we assess the value that's already there, the stinging nettle, the red clover, the mullein leaf. These are such highly medicinal and valuable plants that we actually use and incorporate in our teas, in our production. And then, if there's other medicinals we want to add and other crops we want to plant, we do that around what's already growing. I'm going to leave the mullein leaf and I'm going to plant some calendula and plant some tulsi and some other herbs and whatnot.
So I know that tea, as you just mentioned, is a really big part of what you farm. What are some of the other things that you're growing on the farm?
We do specialize in medicinal herbs, all regenerative practices. We grow a lot of Tulsi Kapoor is one of our favorites, holy basil. We grow a lot of Korean mint, calendula, red clover, chamomile. And we do a small amount of seasonal produce as well. We do a lot of hot peppers, heirloom hot peppers, sweet peppers, eggplants, and tomatoes, and garlic and onions. And then the rest is mostly medicinal herbs.
Farming is one part of what you do and gardening, and another part is education work. Azeem, can you speak a little to that?
So the education aspect is extremely important because, you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, teach a man a fish, feed him for a lifetime. We need a lot of fishes to help really sustain ourselves because as we have seen several times in the past and we will continue to see, anytime there's a food shortage, I know where the food's going to stop going to first. There's going to be people who look like me, who are from where I'm from, who are already food insecure, who are already experiencing nutritional gentrification, right? So we have to do something to protect the people on the bottom of the totem pole, and that's where the education really comes in.
Can you talk a little bit about how you're working with people to help them reconnect with the land?
It really depends. Just like you start farming, we look at what's already there. What's the person's aspirations? Because we can't all be farmers. That shouldn't be everyone's job. Where does your unique piece fit amongst this puzzle? So that can be primarily working as a food advocate who grows food on the side and helps point people to good, healthier food practices. And then we start from there. We have to work past the age-old traumas, especially that involve people of color, and especially Black people in America. I've been told a number of times, I'm not a farmer because I'm not a slave. And I love that conversation, honestly. We as Black people have been here working this land, farming, growing the food, developing the clothing, building houses and mansions, and we've been the builders. And we've done that for so long. It's been incredibly traumatized, even in modern day Black American psychology. So that's one of the first barriers we have to break. We have to begin to associate agriculture with a sense of worth, value, and freedom. We have to begin to now take those same synapses, those same nuances, those same trigger points, and turn them from a negative to a positive. You know what I'm saying? Like, Look how much more free, how happy you can be, how much more connected to your life and to your mission, to your purpose you can be if you just touch this soil. It's a beautiful thing. And then you got immigrants who come from other countries who may have been on the poorer side, and they associate farming with poverty. And they tell their children, you better be a doctor or a lawyer or something. You're not doing this farming thing. So now the children come up and we have to help destroy the great American myth of, one, rugged individualism, because you ain't doing jack by yourself. And two, that agriculture is a form of poverty in itself.
Absolutely. So you all teach a lot of really cool courses. One of them is your garden crash course. And in that, you are sharing a lot of strategies about how people can farm on a budget. First, there's like the psychology piece. Then there's the like, how do we make this accessible in other ways too? Sarah Rose, can you give some tips about how people can get started with farming on a budget?
A lot of people have in their minds that there's, great startup costs to gardening. Oh, I have to go out and buy this. I have to buy a seed starting mix. All of these things, people see as expenses. And I love the idea and the reality that you can absolutely get started gardening on a budget by repurposing materials. So one thing we like to show people is the plastic egg cartons, especially the 3-tier plastic egg cartons, can be an excellent seed starting setup. One of the tiers, you can poke holes in the bottom, you can seed it in the other side of the egg carton, and then even put the plastic dome over to create a little germination chamber and greenhouse effect. It's an amazing way to get started without having to go and buy a seed tray. We teach people to repurpose milk crates with a canvas shopping bag as like a great grow setup that's very easily movable. And, you would just put your soil right in the canvas bag and it'll expand and fill out to the milk crate. Onions is a great thing to grow in containers because you can really fit probably, 6 to 7 onions just in like a milk crate size container. Herbs, we love growing herbs in containers, and greens like arugula, mustard greens, any sort of leafy greens or herbs. Cut and come again lettuce, flowers. There's tons of things you can grow right, in that milk crate container. You get your soil supply, and we like to tell people to check out their town's composting and like waste center, because often the towns will have free compost, or neighboring towns might have free compost, right? So go pick up some compost, add it to your bucket, and you could just direct seed right into the top of the container, and it really can be as simple as that, and you've spent no money, right? In our climate, you can even grow year-round relatively easily. If you say, take like a Sterilite bin with a clear top, fill it with soil, add some drainage at the bottom. And as long as you have that top that you can put on, we know people that have grown greens right through the winter. There's snow. They brush the snow off of the container top, and open it up. And you've got your cold, hardy greens right in there, fresh, right through the winter. So there's really a lot that you can do if you start to think of how and all of the materials you can repurpose to do that.
Also, shout out the 5-gallon buckets.
Yes,
Some things is anywhere. And you use some tomatoes in them joints. You can use some peppers.
Yeah.
You can get them gallon water bottles, flip them on their side, cut that thing open, grow a nice big head of spinach out of that thing. You know what I mean? It's really the sky's the limit, and I love repurposing materials. One thing I love about agriculture is you can be really inventive and creative with what you do without having to mind too much what it looks like. And this is the one field where no one was like, that look ghetto. You don't get that in agriculture.
You get something good out of it. It tastes good.
Right. The plants are just so beautiful that it overshadows whatever the, plastic might look like.
Absolutely. So we touched on this for a second, but healthy soil is such an important part of growing. Healthy soil equals healthy plants. What are some of the tips you have for how people should check their soil, make sure that their soil is healthy and safe?
So if you're growing in ground, especially if you're growing in the city, you definitely want to start with a soil test. And again, it can be very easy. A lot of people are like, scared to take a soil test. But really, it's just you take a bucket, take that 5-gallon bucket. You want to dig up a couple sections. Let's say you have like a rectangular plot. You will plot out maybe 5 to 7 samples covering the total area. You'll mix it in your bucket, and you take a sample size, let's say of 1 to 2 cups. You put it in a bag, and you'll send that soil test out and get a nice breakdown of exactly what's in your soil as far as the minerals, right? So then you have a blueprint to know what to add and if there's any contaminants or anything in the soil. And there's a lot of free resources to be able to do that. Like UConn, I believe, has free soil testing available. And
the Ag Experiment Station. We're a big fan of Logan Labs. It costs like $25, something like that. But, you spend more on stupid things. No offense. Because it's a really good standard test, and you know what to do from that point on.
One of our mentors, Nigel Palmer, has a great book, The Regenerative Grower's Guide to Garden Amendments. And he teaches how to make broad spectrum mineral amendments like fermented plant juices, all kinds of really interesting stuff that's going to add minerals, biology, all of the things that your soil needs to really optimize the health of the soil, because the healthy soil is going to produce the healthiest plants and the biggest harvests. And that's something you can do for almost no cost, right? And you're making these amendments out of, again, weeds and natural materials that are, all around us. Honestly, it's a type of high quality fertilizer that money can't buy.
So what are some of the tips you have when people want to get started growing some fruits and vegetables? We talked about containers already, but what are the things people are most excited to grow, specific crops?
I just wanted to grow everything under the sun when I was first getting started. And I started all these seeds, and then when things started going left during the season, it was like I didn't have my priorities. So a lot of things kind of fell to the wayside, and I felt a little sidetracked, or I felt the weight of those losses. But if you pick 1 to 3 either foods that you really like to eat, or herbs that you like, whatever plants that you feel really drawn to, and say, I'm gonna focus on learning how to grow onions really well this year. Onions, and I want to grow tomatoes, and I'm gonna really make sure I'm successful with these couple things. That's something we recommend people do, is just pick a few.
So let's dig into that. So onions, when do you plant them?
Starting from seed, they're one of the first things we start right at the beginning of the season. So we'll start them mid to late February from seed, and we'll actually go plant them outside mid to late April. But if you want to grow onions this season, you absolutely still can. You'll just want to get them from either onion sets or, purchasing onion plants or onion seedlings that you can then plant.
And what are onion sets? Bulbs or?
Yeah, they're like little bulbs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Azeem, do you have some tips of how to get people growing tomatoes well?
Tomatoes are a fun one. They love the heat. Mm-hmm. Don't try to put them outside now if you start them early. The family's called nightshade. That whole family, when you start them from seed, they like to be potted up and grow to the size of whatever the pot is. So you want to start small and keep them growing bigger. You know what I'm saying? When they fill the size of that little pot, uproot them and put them in a bigger pot. By the time it gets late May, but we'll see what the weather looks like, right? You want to put them outside at that point where it's warm enough. And tomatoes are pretty forgiving, and they give you a lot with some love and some labor. The thing that really gets tomatoes are usually the diseases. So one thing about that is make sure they're well pruned and you have lots of airflow. You don't want the leaves just touching each other, because if it rains or something, or you water it or something, if you see water on the leaves, you want to make sure you kind of get them off. Mm-hmm. Make sure they ain't too close to each other if you're doing multiple of them. You don't want the leaves touching. You don't want them to be too friendly with each other.
Yeah, they can get like a mold so easy on them, and then that's the saddest thing.
And then if you get a harvest later on and you see they have what's called blossom end rot, which is where the bottom of the tomato is kind of deformed and shriveled, that's a calcium issue. Either there's not consistent watering, because calcium is water soluble, or you need to add calcium. There's something called an eggshell apple cider vinegar extract. Bake some eggshells to kill off the biology. Have them sit in some organic apple cider vinegar for a couple of weeks, then just make a foliar spray. So when you see that the tomatoes are starting to flower and starting to put the tomatoes out, just spray it with the foliar spray. Give it that extra calcium and the extra stuff it needs to really make a healthy, full, round tomato.
We actually have a video tutorial of how to make what he's talking about that we can link folks to. So yeah very easy.
That's excellent. One thing I learned when I started growing tomatoes was if you're taking a seedling and planting it in a bigger pot, like a much deeper pot, or in a raised bed or in the ground, is that all the little furry things on the bottom of the stem, like above the soil, but maybe the first 3 inches or more of the stem, will actually turn into roots if you plant them below the soil. So snipping off some of those lower branches and planting the first, 3, 4, 5 inches of that stem way down under the soil, it gives your tomatoes a much stronger stalk to grow on. And I don't think there's any other plant that you do that, right? Where a lot of plants would die if you planted their stalk under the soil, they'd rot. So I just thought that was like a miraculous thing.
We do that with tomatoes and actually the whole nightshade family.
Oh, really?
So peppers and eggplants as well. Yeah, if you break off the bottom leaves and plant that stem as deep as you can in the soil, all of it will turn to roots. And it is pretty amazing. Yeah, other plants you definitely can't do that with.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So when you're working on the farm, are there cultural traditions or rituals that you use to connect with the way that you're planting or to connect with the land?
Everything we do tends to start with prayer. Help me get into my correct spirit. really helped me to relate to the plants better, because you're always going to be off your game at some point or another, right? So you got to align yourself up correctly. I don't want to be upset for no reason or stressed out and I'm trying to touch the plants and interact with the plants, right? That's part of touching people's food, you know what I mean? If the chef is upset and he's cooking the stuff and he's all kinds of upset, right, that kind of comes out in the food. So I always work on grounding myself first and just getting that joyous, grateful, happy vibration and just operating under that frequency.
Especially when sowing seeds, we want to really set an intention and pray for their success, and in harvesting. And it's something I think I've cultivated more. Like, the more I do this work, the more I really feel the sentience of the plants, that they're really alive. They're looking at me, I'm looking at them. So when I harvest them, I thank the plants, for their beautiful medicine, as I harvest them. And it just brings the whole thing together, brings me joy. And I feel that they want to be used for their purpose. When we harvest the mullein, when we thank mullein, we harvest mullein, she is so happy and she produces a lot more. The plants want to be used and want to be appreciated for their real value. Mm-hmm. And that's part of our intention with the harvesting and just, interacting with them.
Yeah. For people who are not religious or think of prayer only in a religious context, prayer is about offering words of thanks. It's offering words of honoring, And so if someone's not religious, they can also speak to the plant from just communicating with them. It's about building that positive connection and relationship.
And plants love music. Plants love hip-hop. You got them good lyrics. Go ahead and spit it.
Word.
That's S to the A to the M to the A to the D. Gardens, plural, initiative.
Thank you both so much for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with us today.
Thank you so much for having us. It was a joy and a pleasure.
Hey, yo, you the bomb, though. You the bomb.
That was Azeem Blessings Kareem and Sarah Rose Kareem. You can buy herbal tea blends and find information about classes on gardening and more on their website. We'll link to it on our show page, ctpublic.org/seasoned. I'm Robin Doyon Aiken. After a short break, we're cheering Jocelyn Cerda on as she creates a fresh produce market for her community.
We'll really be building that relationship between the community and the farmer.
You're listening to Seasoned on Connecticut Public Radio. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Seasoned. I'm Robin Doyon Aiken. Next up, you know that slogan, Hartford has it? Well, historically, what Hartford hasn't had is a place to buy fresh local produce. Our next guest is hoping to change that.
I am Jocelyn Cerda, founder of Mercado Popular.
Jocelyn spoke about her market with producer Catrice Claudio.
Welcome, Jocelyn. Thank you so much for joining us on Seasoned.
Hello.
It's always a pleasure. Now, I've known you for a while now. I'm a volunteer member on the Neighborhood Advisory Council for Mercado Popular, which is Mercado Pop is our affectionate term.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But for people who don't know yet, tell us about yourself, where you're from, your city, your neighborhood.
I am a long-time Hartford resident. My family's been here since I was 6 years old. And I've lived everywhere in Hartford, but right now I am in the Asylum Hill neighborhood.
Oh, so you've been a fixture out here.
Uh-huh.
What has it been like growing up here?
I had a good time. I've just remember as a kid just being outside a whole lot. I'm always the community raised me. You leave your house, join the other kids, and then everybody's playing until it's, time to go home. And I would always say that's Hartford. It's very rich in its culture and community. I feel like the people really make Hartford what it is. People that lived here forever, that know the city like the back of their hand. They know their history. Their family contributed to the building of Hartford in some way. Hartford is a really neighborly city. And of course, it has its struggles. And growing up, I, witnessed a lot of that as well and experienced that. And ultimately has inspired and motivated what I'm about today.
And I love that you mentioned the real Hartford, because there really is a delineation between the Hartford that some of us know and the Hartford that we see in the news and the Hartford we see in certain buildings. So I think it's very important when we're talking about the Hartford we know that there's a community that is beautiful and vibrant and creative, but also dealing with scarcity in resources and lack of prioritization. And so I'm assuming one of the things that motivated you as a resident here was to create solutions to help this community manifest in the way that you've experienced it. So if you could, tell me about Mercado Popular and how it started.
Mercado Popular started from my experience working at Hartford farmers markets. I left a sales job. I was working like 11 hours a day. And I'm like, I can't do this forever, especially because I was becoming more focused on health and wanting and hungry to do more for my community. You know, I was selling cars. I was selling cars to people, and I'm like, I'm contributing to pollution, and, you know, people are taking out loans. Like, I was just like, this isn't helping the world in a way, you know. But I was introduced to a nonprofit organization here in Hartford. I started working as an intern. But I loved the work. I didn't know there were farmers markets in Hartford at all. I didn't know there were farmers in Hartford growing food 5 miles away from where I lived. And just seeing the abundance of leafy greens, root vegetables, fruits. I didn't know what kohlrabi was, for example. And just having that experience and witnessing community members shop at the farmers markets, you know, was inspiring.
I grew up in Bloomfield, adjacent to Hartford, but I always thought that farmers markets were like a suburb and you're living out in the rural sticks and all your neighbors get together and have a garage sale of produce, right? That was my interpretation of farmers markets. So when the farmers market in Hartford in the Promise Zone was a thing, it truly enlightened me to what access I had to local produce from people that I knew, that I could put money in their pockets. So there was a great fascination and love for that experience. And the thing that I didn't realize is it fell within the context of creating an oasis in a food desert. I know we know the terms food insecurity, we know food desert, but on your site, you talk about it's a community organization committed to reducing food apartheid. Could you elaborate more on what food apartheid is?
Typically, there's an abundance of healthy, fresh foods that you find in higher income neighborhoods, and you find an abundance of unhealthy food in lower income neighborhoods. And this just doesn't happen, right? There's planning and policy put into place that creates this situation. And it's unfortunate because you're basically telling people that you don't deserve healthy, fresh foods because you just simply don't have the income. There is a Family Dollar you can do your groceries at. There's some food, you know, so you have to accept the crumbs that you're handed.
And I do believe there is something about the perception of the city's viability that also repels companies from investing in the communities and providing those resources to the community. As someone who grew up in Hartford, did you believe that you had enough good things to eat here?
You know, I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. I was a kid. I love candy. I love juice. I love soda. You know, honestly, my siblings and I lived off of that because my mom was always working. So we relied on the corner stores a lot. You know, I lived off of Broad Street for over a decade, and I just remember.
Shout out to the bodegas. Like, they get us through.
Yeah. So I remember getting, like, just pickles all the time. I was just like, I want a pickle. And they, what is it? I believe it's Romney's on Broad Street. They've been there forever, you know, and that's like a staple market. And it was when I was older and started experiencing chronic illness suddenly and learning more about my illness. So I have Crohn's and colitis. I realized, hey, like, I didn't eat the best growing up. And we really didn't have options. We had to go to Wethersfield to do our grocery shopping. And luckily, my mom had a car. But other than that, I just saw the inside of a bodega for a very long time. So the options were, to me, they were scarce.
And so you started with Mercado Popular as a vessel to create access to health and nutritious, dense food. I remember you started in an empty building that was sitting there forever and being underutilized, and you livened it up with local producers and fresh items. How has your personal journey tracked alongside the market's growth? What's driving your innovation in that space?
I think this is the coolest thing I've ever done. I don't know. Like, it's the biggest thing and the most challenging. I've grown so much as a person just trying to build this market. It's one of those things where I realize how hyper independent I am. Right. I'm like, I'm trying to put a whole store together, and I'm relying on myself and remembering that the mission of Mercado is about community, is about being community-centric and providing that space for folks to be around the food, to be around education. And the mission of, Mercado, or the value, it reminds me to be rooted in community, to reach out, to ask for help, to remind me that other folks can teach me what I need to know. I don't need to know everything. So it's, yeah.
Talk it.
Yes, it's been that journey. And I honestly I wasn't aware back then, even in 2020 when we first started the market, how even though I'm hungry for community, for those relationships, how challenging it could be to build community and how you should work at it every chance you get.
Community buildings like muscle building.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I thought it was like, hey, I have a friend, like, hey, I know you, let's be friends. No, it takes work.
So aside from making fresh, local, healthy food accessible, what other ways is the market serving this community?
You can do more than just come in and shop at Mercado. We want to have a relationship with our community. We'll offer workshops that are led by farmers and also small food business owners in the community. That's, to me, really exciting because you can't, they don't have workshops in Stop and Shop, So we'll really be building that relationship between the community and the farmer. How can I make a fresh salsa with the ingredients in my garden? And I think that will really help just engage community members, not only with the space, but with the food that they purchase, as well as offering a food subscription box service.
Ooh, tell me about that. What's in the box? What kind of food can we get in those subscription boxes?
Yeah, so I always say, you can expect your 5 food groups, your meat, your dairy, your fruits, your vegetables. We'll also provide grains and added value products, seasonings, herbs, what's in season. And that's, I think, the most important takeaway from this because, Stop and Shop may offer strawberries all year round. Mm-hmm. And they might ask us about that. And that'll be our opportunity to educate folks. So for June, and July, you may find lettuce and other leafy greens. And then later down, you'll have more root vegetables available. No box will ever,
Thank you. Because one of my biggest gripes as I've gotten into the food space is how little we understand about seasonality and why food should be celebrated. Who are some of the farmers you're partnering with, and who's providing the food that you sell at the market?
So we are still recruiting for farmer partners. So if you're out there, give us a shout. I have to give a shout out to Samad Gardens Initiative. They've been supportive, through and through. We've actually worked at many farmers markets together. The other group is Park City Harvest. Yeah. They're out of Bridgeport. Run It Organics in Berlin. And shout out to Carlos.
Yes.
I have he's the Batman farmer of Hartford. He just sets up garden beds and starts planting things in just different places. Asaska Foundation, they're a farmer and also a beekeeper.
Exciting.
Terry Soul Naturals, she's an herbal farmer. Fire Ring Farm out in Portland. Shaggy Coos Farm, they will offer a lot of the meat products that we have. Yes. The Craft Bakery will offer most of our baked goods. They're amazing.
They are.
They're amazing. Oh, my gosh. When I first met Naima, I met her at a harvest fest at Knox. And I don't know if she remembers this, but she's like, I sing to my sourdough. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to always remember you because of that, And as soon as I was ready, I reached back out. And also Cimarron Farms in Danbury. There will be more to come.
So shout out to the local farmers, because without y'all, there would be no us, literally. We need the food to live. So thank y'all for your hard work. And thank you for partnering with people like Jocelyn, who are making it easy for people like me to get access to it. There's a quote on your Instagram that reads, "Good food is the foundation of genuine happiness." Does that extend into this work? Are you happy?
Oh, that's such a good question. This is dope. I get to do this every day of my life, helping bring fresh produce, just smelling it, even being close to the earth, speaking with the farmers, learning from the farmers every day. It's really enhanced, honestly, my quality of life. Yes, every day is a challenge, but yeah, this does bring me a lot of joy.
This is giving our community an immense amount of joy and increasing our quality of life as an extension of that. So, Jocelyn, thank you so much for joining us in this conversation. Any socials you want to send out or anything for them to reach you or learn more about you as your store is developing?
Yes, you can follow us at Mercado Pop CT on Instagram and Facebook. And you can also visit mercadopop.shop, and that's our website.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn, for everything you do.
Thank you for having me today.
Visit our show page, ctpublic.org/seasoned, to see photos of Jocelyn Cerda making Mercado Pop a reality, minutes away from where she grew up. I'm Robin Doyon Aiken. Seasoned is produced by me and Catrice, and
Meg Dalton,
Stephanie Stender,
Tegan Engel,
Meg Fitzgerald,
Sabrina Herrera,
and Francesca Fontanez, Martha Castillo, and Catherine Jimenez are on our social team as well. Don't miss our next episode. We'll be talking to a local chef about her first cookbook. Chrissy Tracy joins us again. Catch this and past episodes of Seasoned about delicious things like chocolate, olive oil, ice cream, apple cider, honey, and maple syrup, wherever you get your podcasts. You like the show? Do us a favor and rate it on Apple Podcasts. It really does help other food lovers find us. If you want to know what we're cooking up every month, subscribe to the Full Plate newsletter. I load it up with recipes from cookbooks I love, links to recent episodes, and gardening tips from Charlie Nardozzi. Go to ctpublic.org/newsletters to sign up. Thanks for listening, everybody. See you next time.